Rain fell over the border of Ashreaver land on the night the guards found her. She was thin, barefoot, and covered in mud, crouched beside a dead fire with nothing but a torn cloak to keep out the cold. When the patrol surrounded her, she did not run. She only looked up, and something about her eyes, gold-rimmed like a sunset, made even the hardened warriors pause before they seized her arms and dragged her toward the palace. By morning, the entire court of the 8 packs knew a rogue had been captured. Rogues had no pack, no protection, and no rights. The law of the land was simple and old. A rogue caught on pack territory was killed before sunset. No trial, no mercy. It had always been this way, ever since the wars that shattered the packs generations ago. Cain Ashreaver, Alpha King, sat on his throne of dark wood and iron, watching as the girl was pushed to her knees before him. She did not bow her head. Even in chains, even starving, she held herself like someone who refused to be broken. "Name," Cain said, his voice flat and commanding. "Ren," she answered, just that. No pack name, no family name, because she had none. She had grown up alone in the wild lands beyond the border, raised by an old woman who died 3 winters past, leaving her to survive on her own ever since. The court murmured, already impatient for the execution to begin. Lord Draven, an alpha from a rival pack visiting for a trade agreement, leaned forward with open interest, clearly hoping to see the king's famous ruthlessness on display. But Cain did not give the order. He stood from his throne and walked down the steps, ignoring the surprised whispers around him. He stopped in front of Ren and studied her face for a long moment. There was something achingly familiar in her eyes, though he could not say what. It was not attraction, not exactly. It was recognition, the kind that comes from somewhere deeper than memory. "She stays," Cain said. The hall fell silent. "My king," his advisor Beth said carefully, "the law is clear. A rogue." "I know the law," Cain said. "I made most of it." He turned to face his court. "She will not be executed. She will be my bride." Gasps rippled through the hall. Lord Draven's mouth curved into a slow, calculating smile, sensing opportunity in the chaos. Ren herself stared at Cain as though he had lost his mind, which by every measure she understood, he had. "Under marriage law," Cain continued, "no member of this court may harm her without answering to me directly." It was not romance. It was protection, disguised as a decree. He had bought her time with a title, because he could not yet explain, even to himself, why he needed to. That night, Ren was given a room in the east wing, guarded on both sides. She sat by the window, wrapped in a warm blanket for the first time in years, and wondered whether she had traded one kind of danger for another. The days that followed were strange for them both. The court did not welcome her. Nobles whispered that the king had gone soft, or worse, that he had been enchanted by some rogue trick. Servants avoided her eyes. Only one person seemed to look at her with something other than suspicion or scorn. Elder Mabon, the old keeper of the pack's histories, who found reasons to pass by her chamber more often than necessary. Cain, for his part, kept his distance at first, unsure what to do with the choice he had made on instinct, but small moments began to draw them together. He found her one evening in the kitchen, quietly helping the cooks because sitting idle made her restless. He found himself sitting across from her at dinner, no longer able to eat in silence, asking about her life in the wildlands instead. She told him about learning to hunt with nothing but a sharpened stick, about the winters so cold she thought she would not survive them, about the old woman who had raised her and taught her to never show fear, even when she felt it. He told her, in turn, about the weight of ruling 8 packs that did not always agree, about a father who taught him that kindness was a weakness kings could not afford, about the loneliness of a throne that everyone wanted to sit beside, but no one wanted to share honestly. Neither of them meant to grow close. It happened anyway, in the space between duty and honesty. One night, an assassin slipped past the outer guards, sent by a noble family who saw Ren's presence as a threat to the pack's old bloodlines. Cain found the intruder in her room before harm was done, subduing him with the ease of a king who had fought in more battles than he cared to count. Ren, shaking but unharmed, found herself pulled into his arms, without either of them deciding to do it. He held her until her breathing steadied, and something unspoken passed between them, quiet and certain. It was 2 nights later, while a servant was helping Ren bathe and tend to a small cut from the attack, that the truth began to surface. The servant gasped, staring at the back of Ren's neck, half hidden beneath her hair. There, faint but unmistakable, was a mark shaped like a crescent moon, wrapped around a small star. The servant said nothing to Ren, but she said everything to Elder Mabon. The old man came to Ren's chamber the next morning, his hands trembling slightly, as he asked to see the mark for himself. When he confirmed it, his face went pale, then filled with something like wonder. "Do you know what you carry?" he asked her. Ren shook her head, confused, and a little afraid. Mabon explained, his voice low so no one else would hear. Long before Cain's grandfather united the 8 packs under one crown, there had been a single ruling bloodline, the line of Queen Isolde, keeper of balance between all wolves. Isolde had vanished during the wars that split the packs apart, along with her infant daughter, and no trace of either had ever been found. Some believed they had been killed. Others whispered that the bloodline had simply gone into hiding, waiting for a safer age to return. The crescent and star mark was the sign of that bloodline, said to appear only on true descendants of the lost queen. "You are not a rogue," Mabon said gently. "You are the last of the wolf queens." Ren did not believe him at first. She had spent her whole life being nothing, belonging nowhere. The idea that she was, in truth, the rightful heir to a throne older than Cain's own, felt impossible. But Mabon showed her the old records, the faded drawings of the mark, the histories of a queen who had once kept all the packs at peace, before the wars tore that peace apart. She did not know how to tell Cain. She was afraid of what it would mean, not just for the fragile bond growing between them, but for his crown, built and defended for generations by kings who answered to no one else. She did not have to tell him. Someone else did first. Lord Draven, whose spies had been watching the palace closely since the wedding, learned of the mark through a bribed servant. He saw at once what it meant, not a threat to be reported quietly, but a weapon to be used publicly. If the packs learned that the true bloodline had returned, Cain's authority, built on the strength of his own line, rather than the old queen's, could be questioned. Loyalties could shatter, and in that shattering, an ambitious alpha might find room to rise. He revealed it at the great feast held to formally welcome Ren as queen consort, standing before the entire gathered court and announcing, with false concern, that the king's bride was hiding a mark that made her heir to a throne far older than his. The hall erupted into chaos. Some nobles fell to their knees before Ren without thinking, old instinct overriding new loyalty. Others shouted that it was treachery, a rogue's trick to steal power through false blood. Cain stood frozen for one terrible moment, staring at Ren as the pieces fell together in his mind, the eyes he had recognized without understanding why, the quiet strength she carried even in chains. Ren met his gaze across the chaos of the hall, bracing herself for him to cast her aside, now that the truth was out, now that she was no longer simply the rogue he had chosen to protect, but a rival claim to everything he had built. He did not cast her aside. Cain raised his hand, and slowly, the hall quieted. He walked to Ren's side, took her hand in front of the entire court, and spoke words that would be repeated for years afterward. "I did not marry a rogue," he said. "I married someone whose eyes told me the truth before her blood did. If she is the last of the wolf queens, then she is not a threat to this throne. She is the missing half of it." Draven, seeing his plans slipping away, refused to accept defeat so easily. He invoked an old right, rarely used, allowing any alpha to challenge a disputed claim to leadership through single combat. He demanded the right to fight for the throne himself, arguing that if the old bloodline had truly returned, then the strongest wolf, not the current king, should rule beside it. Cain accepted the challenge without hesitation, but Ren, who had spent her whole life being underestimated, stepped forward and asked for something no one expected. She asked to fight for her own claim, not to be defended like a prize, but to stand as an equal beside the man she had chosen, king or not, queen's blood or not. The court had never seen anything like it, but Elder Mabon, remembering old records of Queen Isolde, fighting beside her own mate centuries before, declared it was, in fact, the oldest right of all. The duel took place at dawn, in the training grounds behind the palace, with the whole court watching in tense silence. Draven was strong, trained for decades in the old ways of combat, confident that a rogue-raised girl and a distracted king would fall easily before him. He was wrong. Ren fought with a fierceness born of years, surviving alone in the wild, quick and unpredictable, while Cain fought with the discipline of a king who had never lost a real battle. Together, they moved as though they had trained side by side for years instead of weeks, each covering the gaps the other left open. When Draven finally overreached, driven by frustration at being matched by two opponents instead of one, Cain disarmed him cleanly, and Ren held him at bay with nothing more than her bare hands and unshaken resolve, proving her strength without needing to take his life. Draven, humiliated but alive, was stripped of his standing among the packs and exiled from the court, his ambitions ending not in blood, but in shame, which for a proud alpha was its own kind of defeat. In the days that followed, the crescent and star mark that had once threatened to divide the packs became instead a symbol of their healing. Ren, no longer hiding, no longer afraid, stood before the gathered alphas of all 8 packs and was formally recognized as the last heir of Queen Isolde. Cain stood beside her, not above her, and together they were crowned not as king and consort, but as equals, ruling side by side, the first time such a thing had happened in generations. At the ceremony, Cain took her hands in his and spoke quietly, meant only for her, though those closest heard it too. "I did not choose you because of what you carry," he said. "I chose you before I knew any of it. That has not changed, and it never will." Ren, who had once been nothing more than a starving girl with no name and no home, looked out at the packs kneeling before her, not as strangers anymore, but as her own people, waiting to be led. She looked at Cain, who had seen her worth before the world had any reason to, and felt for the first time in her life that she truly belonged somewhere. The rogue girl the court had once wanted dead by sunset became the queen who united the packs at dawn, standing beside a king who had broken his own law the moment he looked into her eyes, and never once regretted it.